What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV, and in this video, I want to finally do a video response from a subscriber of mine, Daryl Sloan Coleman. He been wanting me to do a comparison video with the '92 Dream Team versus what he calls the Extreme Team, which consists of the best players, the creme de la creme of the 1960s and 1970s. One caveat in this video is that I have to upgrade everybody to their absolute primes. So the one player that comes to mind that benefits the most from this would be Larry Bird. Of course, in real life, Larry Bird was literally at the tail end of his career, and I believe he retired almost immediately after his experience with the Dream Team in the summer of 1992. Um, the first matchup I would have would be at the center position. Um, the two centers for the Dream Team, the '92 Dream Team, will be Patrick Ewing and David Robinson. In my opinion, the better of the two centers was David Robinson. David Robinson came in the league in 1989 after originally being drafted in 1987. I think he served 2 years with Navy. And the first 7 years, let me think about this. The first 7 years, yeah, of Dave Robinson's career, that was the Dave Robinson that cemented the Hall of Fame induction. Dave Robinson was a beast offensively. He won the 1990 through 94 scoring title over Shaquille O'Neal. It infamously, I think it was the second closest scoring battle, uh, just being beaten up by the 1977 78 scoring duel, which was between George the Iceman Gervin and David Skywalker Thompson. And that battle went down to the wire between David Thompson, the last day of the season, similar circumstances. Uh, David Thompson scoring a mind boggling 73 points against the Detroit Pistons. And George Gervin in his last game of the season, I believe, I think it was against the New Orleans Jazz. Not certain of that, but I think it was against the New Orleans Jazz. Him scoring 63 points. I don't know why, for instance, the New Orleans Jazz popped in my head. Maybe that's I'm thinking about something else. But anyway, last game of the season, '94. I think it was April 24th, 1994. Dave Robinson scored 71 points against the LA Clippers. And Robinson in his prime generally averaged over 25 points per game. Uh, I think on two occasions he led the NBA in rebounding, led the NBA in block shots, I think a couple of times, maybe two or three times. And there was a serious discussion in the mid 1990s whether or not he was the best player in the NBA. This was when Michael Jordan was in the league, all right? There was a serious discussion about that. Now, Akeem Olajuwon kind of shut that discussion up, but this is where David Robinson was playing, the level he was playing at that particular time. He was fast as lightning. He was quick. This is a guy who was running the fast break, you know what I'm saying? Running on the fast break, you know what I'm saying? When he was young and before that devastating leg injury he suffered later on. He was a beast defensively, all right? He won Defensive Player of the Year. I believe it was in 1995, was it? I think it was one of those years he won Defensive Player of the Year. He was the league MVP in '95, and like I said, as he got older, especially after the injury, he was still a top center. He was still one of the best centers, but he came closer to the pack. And as he aged, he definitely became the lesser of the duo between him and Tim Duncan. But he still was a solid center. He still was a guy uh, putting up 18, 19 points, 9, 10 rebounds per game. Had that solid free throw line jumper. Was a dependable foul shooter for a big man. And in most instances, he would win a hypothetical matchup with any center you can think of. But with the extreme team, he's matching up against Wilt Chamberlain. And, you know, very few people are going to win that matchup against Wilt Chamberlain. Now, of course, Wilt Chamberlain's Achilles heel was his free throw shooting. But Wilt Chamberlain is arguably the most dominant player in the history of the NBA. He's put up scoring numbers that will not be replicated by anyone, anytime, any place, anywhere soon. All right. Um, for his career, he averaged 30.1 points per game, just fractionally behind Michael Jordan, second all time. If Wilt Chamberlain, he said this in an interview, if he knew that more people would put so much emphasis on scoring and the record, he would have tried to put so many of his numbers out of reach. Um, Even though Wilt Chamberlain's career scoring mark is 30.1, I think to be more precise, is 30.06. Jordan's 30.12. Uh, at one point in time, when Chamberlain was with the Sixers, his career scoring average was as high as 39, I think, .6. This guy was literally averaging nearly 40 points per game in his career. Even, I think, by the time he's with the Sixers, his career scoring average was like 36 points a game. If it wasn't for the fact that he took such a reduced role with the Lakers and becoming the third, fourth, and then ultimately even the fifth scoring option, that what precipitated his career scoring to drop so much the last few years of his career. Rebounding. I generally consider him the second greatest rebounder of all time. If you look at the raw numbers, he's the greatest, 22.9 rebounds per game. I think it's Dennis Rodman. Some people might say, well, how can you think it's Dennis Rodman? The guy averaged 13.1 and Wilt 22.9. We have to take into account the pace of the game at that particular time, the pace, the way they played basketball at the particular time. There was very little, especially in the early 1960s. There was very little set up plays. The way they played back then, it was very fast paced, and a lot of times they took the first available shot, the first good shot. That's why a lot of times I think that contributed to why it wasn't until the mid 1960s that field goal percentages started rising. Even in the 50s, when they played, they took the first available shot, oftentimes. Sometimes it wasn't a good shot. There's other reasons why the field goal percentage was lower back then, but Wilt, I mean, come on. Wilt probably had at the very least, a 40-inch vertical. He claimed to have a 50-inch vertical. Wilt did exaggerate at times, but let's just split the difference. He had a 45-inch vertical. This is a guy who, at his prime, at his peak, could bench press nearly 600 pounds. All right. This is a guy that could run, I think it was a 4.2, a 4.3, and a 40 meter. This is a guy that could throw the shot put almost 60 feet. All right. This is a guy who, if you listen to a lot of personal firsthand experiences of guys who witnessed how strong this guy was, it's unbelievable. Okay. I know Mel Daniels, who was a big guy himself and a tough guy. Mel Daniels, the great Indiana Pacers great, once said when I want to say it was when Mel was playing in the ABA, and I think Wilt was a coach of a team. I think it was the Conquistadors or Coleman will know what I'm talking about. San Diego Conquistadors or I'm screwing the name of the team up. They got into a fight, and Wilt, the team that Wilt was coaching, I think they got into a fight with some of the Pacers teams, teammates and team players, And Mel Daniels had gotten to it. And I think he even got into Wilt's face. And Wilt warned him one time, whatever, and then Mel Daniels kept yapping at Wilt. And then he said Wilt grabbed him. And he said that never before had, and since had another man grabbed him and he literally could not move. You know, I remember Mark Eaton, Mountain Man, played with the Utah Jazz. Statistically, you can make a case he's the greatest shot blocker in the post Kareem, post Russell and Chamberlain era. Statistically, all right, averaged 3.5 blocks per game for his career. Mountain Man was 7'4", 275, 290. Strong. He mentioned how Wilt Chamberlain was playing against him in a scrimmage. And this was like in the mid 80s when Wilt was like 50. And he said that Wilt was backing him down and like literally bullying him in the post. Like he had never uh, experienced someone strong enough to do that to him. All right. So, my answer is with that one advantage, Wilt Chamberlain. Power forward position, Dream Team Barkley, Karl Malone. Peak for peak, I got to go with Barkley, but longevity will push. I'll have to go with the mailman. All right. So it's Karl Malone. Karl Malone, the most durable power forward in NBA history. All right. I think he played over 1,400 games in his career. Was going for the all-time scoring record and could have gotten it had he continued to play, but after the death of his, I think it was his grandmother, he lost interest and he retired. Karl Malone was ox strong, you know what I'm saying? Uh, very physical. Um, Everything about his game screamed old school, you know. Karl Malone could not play in today's NBA. He would send so many guys into early retirements, you know. Just a fierce guy, man. Um, Worked his way into becoming a good foul shooter. His rookie year, he shot only 48% from the free throw line. He worked his way into becoming about a 75 or so percent career free throw shooter. Um, Got to the foul line a lot. All right. Like I said, he was very physical. He knew a lot of tricks too. James Harden's not the only guy that knows tricks to get to the foul line. But unlike James Harden, there were some things Karl did that were a little bit dirty. But for the most part, Karl Malone, he didn't rely on just tricks alone to score. Okay. Um, he was a solid rebounder, not overwhelming. This is a guy who generally averaged around 10 or so rebounds per game. Wasn't a great leaper, uh, but he was athletic enough. As Karl Malone hit 30, 31 years old, that's when I started really seeing that patented uh, post fall away jumper that he developed. It's not totally like a fall away jumper like Mike, but he used to, you know, he used to. Well, I guess it was a fall away jumper. Um, and I remember he used to just kill cats with that, man. Um, Karl Malone, awesome, man. Generally, Karl Malone in his prime, 25 to 30 points per game, 10 rebounds, 3 assists. On the defensive end, Karl Malone was above average, I'd say. Not a lockdown defender, but he was above average. Now, in the extreme team, he's going up against Bill Russell. Now, in this situation, Bill Russell has some advantages. Bill Russell's listed 6'9", 215. Got to remember, this is when these heights were heights in bare feet with shoes on, like they do in today's NBA. He'd be 6'10". And by the time Bill Russell was into his fifth, sixth championship, he was more around 235 or so rather than 215. Okay. He was more athletic than Karl Malone. He was faster than Karl Malone. Defensively, in some ways, he would give Carl fits. But what I could see with Carl is, by Carl being at that time a little bit more unconventional as to the way power forwards played in Russell's time, I could see Carl relying more and more throughout the game on his outside shooting. Now, eventually that would draw Russell out from the paint, and that would open up opportunities for other players, to score via penetration. Although you still have to worry about Wilt Chamberlain. You know what I'm saying? But, at the same time, Wilt doesn't have eyes in the back of his head. So that could be a very interesting matchup in this situation. I guess I don't know who I would say win this matchup. Bill Russell is a little bit smaller. Karl Malone, the elbows. Wow. Even though I rank Russell higher because of the achievements, man, I want to say possibly I might go with Karl Malone in this matchup. So since I'm going to small forward position, since I'm ranking up Bird is now the starting small forward. Larry Bird, one of the, in my opinion, 5 greatest players ever played in the NBA. Played 13 seasons. I wish Bird had kept his health longer. I wish he was able to play a couple of more seasons. But of course, Bird, Larry Legend, 3 NBA championships. I think he had, 5 NBA final appearances? I got to think about that one. 1981, 1984, 1985, 1986, 1987. Yeah, 5. 5 NBA final appearances. All right. 3 consecutive MVPs. Larry Bird owned the mid-1990s. The Larry Bird that we saw in the 1990s is the Larry Bird that Bob Cousy once said that he thought was the greatest player that he had ever seen in the history of the NBA. And you got to remember that Bob Cousy had been one of the close to original players in the NBA, playing in the 1950s. And here he was saying that he thought that Bird was possibly the best player that he had ever seen. Now, what about Bird? Bird was a great shooter. Offensively, he was clutch. He was a very good rebounder for his position. For his career, he averaged 10 rebounds per game, almost exactly. Before the back injuries mounted, Bird was a guy that was averaging 11, maybe even close to 12 rebounds per game for his career. Later on in his career, as his back degenerated, he wasn't quite as effective at hitting the boards. He didn't quite, bang, I guess when I'm trying to say the boards, but he did occasionally do that because that's just the way he played. But Bird, early in his career, was primarily a scorer. All right, he was a scorer who could do it all. Later on in his career, he became more of a facilitator who scored when it was necessary. And Bird elevated the level of play of everybody around him. And I still maintain that even though I have seeded and ranked Magic higher than Bird because of his career achievements, I still think that Bird was the better of the two skill wise, in my opinion. All right. Larry Bird was a mental assassin. Larry Bird would do whatever he had to do to beat you. Even that means destroying you psychologically. You saw what he did to Julius Erving during that game. And Julius Erving was, the epitome of cool. With the Extreme Team, his opponent would be Elgin Baylor. Elgin Baylor was one of the first players to uh, attack the rim vertically. For his day, you could say he was something of like a mesh between Michael Jordan and Julius Erving. All right, he was probably from the late 50s into the early to mid 1960s, the second greatest offensive force in the NBA behind Wilt Chamberlain. Uh, he was exciting to watch. I'm pretty sure you guys might have seen the highlight of him dunking on Bill Russell. And he was a tremendous rebounder for his position. I think for his career, he averaged like 13 and a half rebounds per game. Take into account the era he played in today's NBA, or maybe the 90s, I'd say, his rebound would probably be more like 8 to 9 rebounds per game, or 8 or something like that. Still an above average rebounder for his position. He was 6'5". I think he was maybe 220, I think. So he was a big, small forward for that era even. Defensively, I want to say Baylor was a good defender. I haven't seen a lot of games with him. I think his reputation was that he was a good defender, not a great defender. Um, in this matchup, though, I would have to go with Larry Bird. Um, although I could see Baylor getting the best of Bird offensively at times, just because of Baylor's physical gifts. But I want to give the edge to Larry Bird in this situation. All right. Shooting guard. The Extreme Team, Jerry West. Jerry West to me is the third greatest shooting guard of all time behind only Jordan and Kobe Bryant. Jerry West ultimately became the better of the duo in LA when it pertains to Elgin Baylor and Jerry West. Jerry West commanded awesome respect from his contemporaries for his all-around game. He was great offensively. He was great defensively. The way he approached the game, he's as close to Michael Jordan in some ways. Even though I know most people compare Kobe to Michael, Jerry West should gain that type of respect too. Yeah, I know he was a white boy and all that shit. Racing got nothing to do with it when it comes to basketball, all right? Jerry West could ball. Jerry West was unbelievable, all right? The only problem with Jerry West is that whenever he was in the playoffs, he always ran into the Boston Celtics. And no matter how great an individual player is, you only could do but so much against a great team. For many years, Jerry West had the second highest scoring average in the history of the NBA. For a long time, from his day until the rise of Michael Jordan, he had the highest scoring average in the history of the playoffs. and he had I think it was the third highest scoring average in league history behind only Chamberlain and Elgin Baylor. Of course, as you got these guys playing today and the way the offenses are, you got a lot of guys now with higher career scoring averages. But Jerry West was awesome, man. Great outside shooter, great mid-range shooter, had one of the quickest releases, stingy on defense, man. Would probably be second only to John Stockton if steals were counted when he played. All right, he was a great passer. Uh, if the 3-point line was available back then, he'd probably be a 35 to 40% 3-point shooter. He could do it all, man. He could slash the basket, and he was bigger than what people think he was. I see usually he's listed as 6'2". I remember looking at footage of him, and I always remember, even as a teenager, thinking to myself, that guy's bigger than 6'2". You could just look at him and compare him to other players where the heights were confirmed, and you could tell he wasn't 6'2". He didn't look like he was an inch taller than Isaiah Thomas. He looked more like he was along the lines of Dwayne Wade, or maybe even slightly taller than Wade. And I think Jerry West admitted that he was actually 6'4.5" when he played, which would indicate he was close to the same height as Michael Jordan. He didn't have the hops like Michael, but you're getting where I'm going with that. Of course, with the Dream Team, he's going up against Michael Jordan. I don't think I have to even go into explanations about who wins this situation. All right. I know it's just, if you talk about one game, anything can happen. Michael could have an off game. West could go off for 50. I get that. But if you're talking about a series between these two teams, the law averages would go with Michael Jordan. I don't even have to go into detail about this. Killer assassin. For many years in the NBA, he was the best offensive player and best defensive player in the NBA, especially perimeter defense. All right, led the NBA steals 3 times, Defensive Player of the Year in '88 season, highest career scoring average in regular season and playoffs. One of the few players that I've seen who actually raised their level of play in the playoffs when it matters the most, and even raised it to a higher standard when he was in the NBA Finals. 5-time NBA Finals, 5-time regular season MVP, 6-time NBA Finals MVP, 10-time scoring champion. And the honors go on and on and on. Generally considered the greatest player of all time, Michael Jordan wins this contest. All right. At the point guard position for the Extreme Team, you have Oscar Robertson, Mr. Triple Double, 181 official confirmed triple doubles. Although I think that unofficially, guys like Bill Russell and Wilt probably have more unofficial career triple doubles, but you get what I'm talking about. For many years, Oscar Robertson was the only player ever to average a triple double for a season until Russell Westbrook achieved that feat back in the 2016-17 season. Russell Westbrook is now working on his third consecutive triple double, and with his averages, it's most likely he's going to accomplish that. But as a player, Oscar Robertson was awesome. Oscar Robertson is considered probably the best all-around player of the 1960s. All right. Oscar Robertson, unfortunately, played the vast majority of his prime on teams that were very good, but not great. And in this age of championship, this age where people are just obsessed with championships and not substance, guys like Oscar Robertson's stock have dropped. Because Oscar was the big O. Oscar was the man. Elgin Baylor was the man when I was growing up. These guys were looked upon as gods in NBA history. Now they're not talked about as much. Even a guy like Pete Maravich, they're not talked about as much. All people say is that, well, they won no championships, or Kareem carried him to a championship, which is utter stupidity. Oscar Robertson, in my opinion, is a top 10 all time player. I think you have to at least put Oscar in your top 12 to 13 or something like that, in my opinion, okay? Um, with the Dream Team, you have Magic Johnson. Now, Magic was still close to his prime during '92 Dream Team. You can make some arguments that he was slipping a little bit, especially on the defensive end. But there wasn't much indication that he was slipping at that time. Magic Johnson, 6'7.5" in shoes, 6'9", 215, 220 pounds in his prime. I like goatee Magic. Whenever I see games where Magic don't have that goatee, I'm like, this must be after Kareem, you know. This is Magic when he's starting to slip a little, just a little bit, you know. But goatee Magic, goatee Magic was the shit, man. Goatee Magic was a matchup nightmare. All right, matchup nightmare. And for a guy to be that big, to be able to handle the ball as well as he did, and to be able to see the court in a way that virtually no other point guard is able to see, being that tall, um, presents a challenge that very few players are able to combat. One of the few players I saw be able to guard Magic and give him problems was Scottie Pippen. In the 1991 NBA Finals, Scottie's length and relative height, 6'7", 6'8", was able to give Magic some issues. Oscar was bull strong, though. Oscar was a very strong guard, man. Oscar was 6'5", probably uh, as he got bigger and older, probably like 235, 240-ish maybe. Um, he would give Magic some, I think, difficulties in the post because Oscar was a big dude. You know what I'm saying? Um, I think if I were Oscar, well, how can I say this? If I was Oscar, my strategy on Magic would be to attack Magic Johnson as much as possible and try to get him in foul trouble. That would be my thing with Oscar. Okay. If I'm Magic, what I would try to do is to try to be the same way. I would try to be offensive minded and try to make Oscar work on both ends of the court because I sometimes suspect that as Oscar got a little older, um, he didn't look to me as if he was in the best absolute conditioning of his life. I mean, I think, don't get me wrong, man. The guy played a lot of minutes. He was in great basketball shape, I'm assuming. But you look at Oscar sometimes, you know, when you're heavier, you just don't have the same stamina as a person who's smaller. You just don't. All right. Um, but those are some things that come to mind with that situation. As far as who wins this matchup, to me, it's a toss up. Um, Magic's floor generalship, his leadership, is is unquestioned. But Oscar presents Oscar presents obviously a challenge to Magic Johnson in this situation, man. Um, I think when it comes to, I don't really want to bring up rebounding because they're point guards. It's not like they're down the trenches battling for rebounds and shit. Um, Passing's concerned, Oscar was tremendous. Magic to me is either the greatest passer in NBA history or just behind John Stockton. On defense, neither of these guys were, from what I understand, with Oscar for reputation, none of these guys were lockdown defenders, but Magic got better defensively as he got older. Earlier in his career, Magic Johnson kind of gambled a little bit with steals. and that could hurt him a little bit. That's why Magic led the NBA in steals a couple times, but as he got older, he stopped gambling as much, um, and he became a good defender or an average defender. I think it was. I think Oscar was in the same boat. Okay, but this matchup is a toss-up. I think what sends the extreme team over the edge as far as having the advantage in this situation would be their bench. Um, of course, with the dream team, that would mean the bench would be Patrick Ewing, Charles Barkley, Scottie Pippen, Clyde Drexler, John Stockton, and of course, you would have Chris Mullin and the college boy whose name is Christian Laettner. Now that's one hell of a bench. It is. That's a hell of a bench. Um, I'm just trying to think of how many MVPs are on that bench. Barkley, I think just Charles Barkley. But with the extreme team, you have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. As great as Patrick Ewing is, I can't see him winning that matchup. Then at power forward, you have Bob Pettit. Now Barkley historically is the greater player, but we all know that Barkley was not a very good defensive player. Bob Pettit came into the NBA as a player who played primarily with his back to the basket. You could kind of Bob Pettit to me is sort of like he's sort of like Kevin Love, but Kevin Love with he's sort of like Kevin Love with a post game. You know what I'm saying? Like Kevin Love with a better post game. That's Bob Pettit, and a little bit tougher. Actually, a lot tougher. Um, Bob Pettit would give Barkley problems because of his range. All right. Barkley was not a guy that wanted to go around chasing people on the court. You know what I'm saying? Barkley kind of didn't give the absolute best effort on defense. And I could see Bob Pettit playing as a stretch four, coming off the bench, and giving the Dream Team some problems. Bob Pettit actually had range going out probably to the modern day's 3-point line. All right. Small forward, you have Julius Erving. Enough said. All right. Shooting guards, you have George Iceman Gervin coming off the bench. Then you have Rick Barry, Nate Archibald, and last but not least, Elvin Hayes, one of the greatest turnaround jumpers in the history of the NBA. I mean, their bench is loaded with scores. And I could see the extreme team's bench in a close contest blowing a game open or being able to bring their team back from whatever the starters for the dream team are doing. You know what I'm saying? I think in a 7-game series, I have to go with the extreme team, man. With their bench alone, man. As great as Michael Jordan is, as great as Larry Bird is, they're not going to be able to play 48 minutes every game. And I have to go with the extreme team, man, in the series, man. I would have to go with them 4-2 over the dream team. Now, I know most of you didn't listen to this whole fucking video, but if you did, Tell me what you think about this matchup. Some of you probably gonna listen to half of them. Tell me what you think any goddamn way. But that's my take on that, man. So I did off the fly. Wasn't able to really go further into breakdown. Thinking more than I, am able to on the fly. But tell me what you guys think, man.